Hello and welcome to episode 7. Today we're going to be talking about Guatemala. So what you'll need is your passport, you'll need your Hep A, your Hep B shots, and highly recommended that you get your typhoid shot.
So we're going to talk about some of the souvenirs that you might want to pick up while you're in Guatemala. For one thing, they have these beautifully colored, I think they're table runners technically, but you could use it as a shawl, table runner, whatever, only a few dollars. Beautiful scarves of any color you can imagine. In Tikal National Park for less than $5, these nice little plates, or even earrings that look like the various temples of Tikal. So those are just a few of the souvenirs you might find while you're there.
All right, so here's Guatemala. It's in Central America. And this is the rough route we took. We flew into Guatemala City and kind of followed it up north before moving over into Belize.
So we started out by staying at a hotel called Quinta de las Flores. Beautiful hotel with a lot of flowers, really pretty gates. It felt like a very, very safe place to be. Guatemala City is a very modern city with a lot of fast food restaurants like Papa John's, Little Caesars, Burger King, Church's Chicken. But it was a large city, lots of traffic, lots of air pollution. So it was nice to leave the city and go to Antigua. It took us about an hour and a half. Should only be about 45 minutes southwest of Guatemala City to get to Antigua.
So lots of really nice little cafes in Antigua. As you can see, the currency was very good. About one US dollar gave you almost 8 quetzals, or one quetzal is about 13 US cents.
And I can't say that word very well, so anything I talk about with money, I'm just going to say Q. So one of the first things that we did when we arrived in Antigua after getting settled in was going to Cerro de la Cruz, and it was the cross on the hill. And it was a great view of the entire city, as well as being able to see the volcano off in the distance. That volcano is actually called Agua volcano. The picture on the right is just showing some of the really beautiful buildings. Antigua has a really long history dating back to the late 1600s.
Yep. And we had to hike up to get up to this viewpoint. And at the base, we were hungry and there was nowhere around for lunch. So we found a street vendor with some Spanish bread.
So this city has a lot of ruins, and we'll show other pictures of ruins throughout the presentation. There have been multiple 7.0 or greater earthquakes on the Richter scale. Three major ones happened in the 1700s. A lot of the buildings were just getting completed in the early 1700s when a massive earthquake devastated a lot of the area, and they've left a lot of those, or you can see the damage. On the right, you can see how right within the city, how apparent the volcano is in the background. And
Yep. This is the Santa Catalina Arch, which is a fairly prominent figure in town.
there's also a very large church nearby. So the buses in Guatemala were very, very colorful. There were red ones, yellow ones, blue ones, green ones. Sometimes the locals called them chicken buses because you never knew what was going to be traveling on the bus with you. But the buses were a really very reasonable way to maneuver yourself around town.
This was the emerald lizard, and obviously you can see very brightly colored and uh, definitely stood out.
So one of the things we definitely wanted to do while we were in Guatemala was hike a volcano, and there were several different options to choose from, but the time requirements or time of year is dependent on where you can go. So this one was a close to Antigua, about 40-minute drive, the Pacaya National Park area. It only cost 50 Qs, which is about how much money, Miles?
About $7.
per person. Not too bad for national park entry fee and the ability to hike. If you got tired, you could have a horse take you to the top. They call it the horse taxi, but we decided that no matter what, we were going to make it on our own.
Yep. And the volcano itself we were there in 2014. It had erupted in 2010, and it was still very, very active, but then it erupted again in 2015.
So you can really see the lava fields. As he was saying, the eruptions caused the lava flows recently. So there was a little shop where you could buy jewelry that was made from the lava that had come out of the 2010 volcano, and that store had gotten devastated a few different times, and they'd have to rebuild because of volcanoes.
So here you can see more of the lava field, just a little closer view. Oh, and the little shop out in the distance.
So this was a really cool view after we'd hiked to the top of Pacaya, looking across at Agua. So that was a really famous volcano that was the one that you could see from everywhere in town, including the one you could see from the cross on the hill. So one of the coolest experiences, I'd say one of the top 10 experiences I've had anywhere that we've ever traveled, was when we arrived at the top, the guide hadn't told us that he had anything in his backpack, and he pulled out a bag of marshmallows.
Yep. And well, there were, for the most part, where we walked was fine, but there were kind of holes or vents coming from underneath, and underneath all this molten lava or rock was actual heat coming through, and it was hot enough where we could actually cook the marshmallows or roast the marshmallows without actual fire.
Which meant that you couldn't risk catching your marshmallow on fire, so it created the most perfect ever golden brown marshmallows that I've never been able to replicate again since.
And some of us only had one.
And others of us may have had 4 or 5 or 6.
We won't say which one was which.
There were also so many fruit and vendor markets with a various array of things to choose from. Really reasonable prices. We were able to get 2 pounds of strawberries for only 5 Qs. Very, very cheap.
Yep. So about 65 cents. Large variety, very good fruits. Except don't buy this, the Perolero.
Yeah, so we were on our walk back to the hotel, and women were sitting on the side of the road selling these, and we like to support the local economy anywhere that we go and travel, and they were selling them, and so we tried to ask if we could eat them as they were, and they said yes, and we're kind of smiling and laughing, but sometimes they might just smile and laugh because we look funny. But it was actually because it was more like a vegetable that you needed to be able to cook. And of course, we didn't have any stove for cooking, so don't buy those.
And we found that out when we got back to the hotel.
So as we were mentioning with the volcanic activity, part of the city they've actually left the ancient ruin remains, so that tourists can see what things used to look like back in the 1700s.
Yeah, so the earthquakes in the 1700s really did a lot of damage to most of the architecture, including here. So this was built in 17.
I think they started it in the late 1600s, but it was completed in 1717.
And a few months later, the first earthquake hit and caused some damage. Did some repairs. 1750s, another earthquake hit, caused more damage, but what was the last one? In the 1770s, the major one hit, which caused all this devastation. But they've left it, and they kind of keep it going, so you can see. So these ruins are over 200 years old, and more earthquakes have hit since.
So one of the things that I recommend for any tourist is to try to find out what sorts of events are going on while you happen to be there. So of course Miles is a runner, so sometimes we look for races and then plan a trip around the race, or other times we plan a trip and then see if there happens to be a race.
As you can see from the picture on the left, not a lot of North American United States people in the race. So a lot of teams, a lot of team jerseys for a lot of people. So from a lot of the different Central American and even South American countries.
So we also did a coffee plantation tour. The first thing that they do with the coffee is they actually graft the plant. So there's the robust coffee plant and their Arabicus. Arabicus tastes much better, but the root system is very weak. So they actually cut the plant and graft the Arabicus leaves and stem onto the roots of the robust coffee plant. And the women get paid per plant and can get paid about $1 per hour for doing 100 plants per hour. And they grow in these little plastic sacks for about 3 years.
And here you can see the actual coffee beans.
They're still green at this point. They let us try them. They taste kind of like hay or barley. As they turn red, that means that they're ready to pick, and family units can work together to pick basketfuls. You can get paid by the day or paid by the basket, depending on the plantation that you're working at. But an entire family maybe can make, on a really good day, about $15. So next, we left Antigua with a group on a group tour, and we traveled to Flores, which is a little island in the middle of a lake. We left at 3:30, 4 o'clock a.m. to try to get through the Guatemalan traffic, and we didn't arrive at Flores until 2. So when you look at that map at the beginning of the video, you can see that we covered a great distance to get to that northern part. That's just the price you pay for hitting the highlights of a country. Sometimes you have very long travel days.
Yep. And there were, I think, crocodiles or alligators, I forget which, in the lake. We never saw any, but supposedly there were some.
The little island, we could actually walk the entire thing. It's very small. We could leave from our hotel on the mainland, walk across a bridge, and make our way to the island. Really brightly colored buildings.
Yep. And the buildings kind of went in a circle, and then you go up a level through an alleyway or a roadway to the next level, up to the peak.
You could take boat trips. That was one of the jobs of several people in the area, was to give little boat trips from the mainland out to Flores. And then there were local restaurants that served up really great food for extremely reasonable prices.
Very, very good food.
And then this was on our walk back to the mainland, looking out over the island of Flores at sunset.
Then we went to Tikal, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And it became a national park in 1955 and a UNESCO World Heritage Site later. But it's a Mayan civilization that started as early as 600 BC and then died out around 900 AD. So it was a civilization for a very, very long time. But it got covered in jungle growth and wasn't discovered again until the 1800s. And many, many, many of the pyramids, or temples, you would say, are still covered with vegetation. It's very, very expensive, and it takes a lot of time to unearth them. A university in Pennsylvania went to do an excavation, and they worked on the project for 13 years.
So you can see lots of ancient ruins, lots of wildlife.
The howler monkey, so an adult on the left and a baby on the right.
Yep, they were very, very loud. We could walk on any of these ruins that we wanted to.
This is on the right is the keel-billed toucan, and then on the left is the emerald toucanet.
And here you can see the workers actually clearing off the ruins.
They worked by the month, and I believe they got paid somewhere around $50 per month for doing that.
Yep. And this was from a scene from Star Wars. You could actually climb up and sit on this one and on an overlook, and basically you just see the top of the forest, and then the sun and the sunset if you're there late enough.
That's our time. Thank you so much for watching Guatemala. I highly recommend visiting Tikal National Park.